seriously kidnap people at this point. I have not talked to anyone I have not given birth to in so long that I am, like, so socially inept at the moment. So, thank you.
I mean, like, you know, like, I live in Wisconsin, so there's just, like, weeks where the only time I'll go outside is to get food.
I can't even imagine that. Like, I live in, like, I'm not kidding you, I'm in California, and it was 77 degrees yesterday. Like, it was creepy hot. Like, I'm wearing this super lightweight, like, t-shirt, and we're hot. And it's February. If that doesn't creep everyone out, I don't know what does. But, like, I can't imagine, like, the snowbound stuff. And with chronic illness, snowbound stuff is insane.
I mean, we've actually had a really warm winter. I wore sandals last week, because it was 45 degrees and I wore sandals.
Okay, y'all in the Midwest have, like, I don't know, some sort of superpower that us little weaklings in California just, no.
It's sunny. I was like, get the Birkenstocks.
Oh my
god. And today it's like 25 and sunny, and I'm like, this is good.
My daughter's best friend is from Iowa, and she laughs at us over winter break. She's like,
yeah,
it's 50 degrees, right? That's shorts weather. I don't know what y'all are doing in your, like, jackets and scarves. Oh my god. So we were going to discuss infantilizing, which means, like, treating someone like a child with chronic illness, but I'm going to tangent. I can't help it. I'm so sorry. I'm so punch drunk. This is what 2 sick kids for 1 week will do to me. I have no brain cells. It's, it's one thing when you're trying to take care of yourself and keep your own doctor appointments steady, but when you're trying to, like, make health decisions for 2 other people and, like, yeah. So you're gonna have to carry me on this interview is basically what I was trying to come down to.
Okay, I can do that. With the conversation, there we go.
We can do this.
I'm sure we have plenty to discuss.
I mean, I was just gonna, like, start in with the lovely fact that whenever I'm in a wheelchair, everyone talks to my husband.
Oh, yes.
That's one of my favorites is, like, how's she doing? I'm sorry.
Does she need help getting in the building? And you're like...
I don't even know where to begin with those comments. Like, do you want me to discuss that your building is not ADA compliant? Do you want me to discuss that I'm a person who can express myself? Like, so we could start there if you wanted to start with that, or we could start with anything. I mean,
I definitely think we should talk about that, but I was thinking about, I knew we were going to have this conversation, so I was, like, kind of keeping a check personally of, like, how I was being treated in, like, public place. And I've had an issue at the local airport for years now that and it's a very small airport, so I know the staff, like, I kind of recognize them because I fly a lot. And every time I go through the body scanner, there's been multiple times where they say to me, are you at least 12 years old?
Oh.
And I'm like, I'm 26 years old. Why would a 12-year-old be wearing, like, leather pants and eyeliner? That's really weird.
Okay, no, my child would do that if I had all had leather pants in the house. My 12-year-old would do that in a heartbeat. I'm not even playing. No trying to talk down what your experience is. I'm just saying 12-year-olds right now.
There are some very stylish kids, right?
Seriously, the ugly phase that I went through at 12 just does not exist in this Instagram world. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, my niece is pretty fantastic. So I go through the security, and I was like, this is, weird. So that always happens to me, and I kind of just laugh about it, but it also, like, really bothers me because it keeps happening. It happens at other airports. But so I was coming back from England a couple weeks ago, and I have 7 tattoos, but most of them aren't visible. But I just got I have visible ones on my arms now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I purposely was like, I'm going to see if they ask me. So I wore a t-shirt going through security, because I was like, all right, 12-year-olds don't have tattoos. Like,
some badass ones might.
Maybe, but, like, probably not. And sure enough, it did work.
Okay.
And, like, they didn't ask me that time, so I was like, yeah, I shouldn't have had to do that. It's also, like, concerning, because they asked me after I go through security, so I'm like, I already did the part that I needed parental consent for, and then you asked me if I can consent.
That's concerning.
It was very concerning. I've talked to one of the airports about it, and I was like, your security people need to check this sooner or something. But it was, like, an interesting way of thinking, all right, like, what are the signifiers that mark someone as older, as mark someone as, like, they can consent? right? So it's like the wheelchair makes that void for you, apparently.
The wheelchair makes almost like at the airports is like I get like pretty much my yearly gynecological exam at the airport when I go through with my wheelchair. It's like I feel like I need to be asked out for dinner. Maybe like consent becomes a whole new thing. Like, and I mean, I know I'm being kind of funny about it, but it gets embarrassing, and it's like it's what are you gonna say? No, like
right? Exactly. It's the ultimatum.
It is, and it's public, and like I've had sexual assault issues, so it's really weird for me to be standing somewhere with someone's hand up my bra and I'm not kidding, like up my bra while people are like walking around while my child is watching, and like then they make you try. If you can stand at all, you have to stand. I make them put my canes through first while I'm sitting in the wheelchair, and then I can use my canes to stand, but it's really painful. And then they're like all over you, and I don't know what about being in a wheelchair having canes just signals you as you are obviously going to be a very big problem at the airport, but
yeah, you're a threat, right?
I mean, if anyone's like watching this, I could not look more like a soccer mom if I tried. I am basically a Disney version of a soccer mom, and right, like I can't do intimidating. I've tried, it does not work.
That's
so it's
amazing,
strange,
right? Because like airports are so famous for profiling people.
Yeah. But
right, I never have security issues. But my dad is like big scary man. He has very tan skin. He looks a little bit Arab. He is always the first one pulled aside.
Oh my god, it's
always like they profile me. They're like, yeah, I got through with that. I once had.
Well, you're 12, knife. So
I had a steak knife in my backpack once because it fell out of my lunchbox.
Oh my god!
And it went through security, and they let me through with the knife. And I was like, you never should have done that. You should have pulled me aside. Like, that's not okay. So, like, why is the wheelchair user being profiled in this way?
It's really intense. And they don't really ask a lot of questions. I'm probably the way I'm going to die is I'm going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person in a snarky way. So I'm, like, trying to make conversation because they're, like, really doing medical exams at that point. I mean, right? Crazy. Yeah. It's a very weird experience. And it is, in a lot of ways, like feeling like I'm a kid again because there's this figure of authority and there's nothing I can say to that figure of authority.
Right.
To get through where I need to go. It's kind of like you just have to play that game and it's really awful. Like, it's a very strange, place to be when you're in your 40s to suddenly, like, not have any authority here.
Right.
And, like, no bodily autonomy. And I think we can go into that with medical procedures, too, because that's the ultimate in, like, pat on the head and be a good girl or be a good boy or be a good person and be a good child and sit still and just let this happen.
It is. And I think part of it, too, that I'm thinking about now with you is, like, it's not just... it's not as easy as, if, people with chronic illness or especially people with, like, mental illness or mental disabilities or neurodivergent are seen as, like, an eternal child.
Yeah.
A forever child, anyways. Right? That's kind of a popular myth. And, as you're saying, it's not just that people view us that way at times. It's also that they make us play to that role in those various social cues. So it's like we kind of have to live up to that stereotype in order to what you said, like, I need to get medical care. Yeah. I need to get on this plane. I already paid, so much money for the ticket. I need to get on this plane. Or, there even, I think, are, like, professional situations where you're kind of like, when do I just kind of grin and bear it?
There's just a huge thing about there's a disability conference, I'm going to blank on where it was, but the Twitter storm was real with them not having accessibility for wheelchair users who were panelists to get up onto the stage.
Yeah. I think it was AWP.
Thank you. Yes.
That was a mess a few years back.
Was that? Because I feel like it was just a few minutes ago that I saw that on Twitter, but a memory.
It might have been another one, and I wouldn't have doubted it.
Yeah, they don't seem to learn anytime soon. But another thing we could also discuss is that there are a lot of the times people in our lives who need us to stay childlike. Like, I know that there are definitely people in my life who feel a lot more comfortable if there's certain aspects of my life I hand control over to.
Oh, yeah. Like, I say to my friends and I say to my family, like, in a joking but also, like, serious way, why is it that all of my nicknames for me all have to do with my size?
Oh.
It's all like little. Like little is one of my like constant nicknames. Like various friend groups have called me that like throughout the years, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, I get it. Very funny, but I also have a million other qualities that are totally overlooked here, right? This is the one you're harping on.
You make such a good highlight on, like, what are the qualifiers of, like, what do we see ourselves as, and how does that actually, you know, like, oh God, my poor brain. It's just chasing around an idea. It's the saddest thing to see the inside here. But I'm sorry, my brain's gone. But the basic idea was like, what qualifies us as adults? Like, what are the traits that make us functional? Like, is it that we can remember our appointments? Is it that we can remember to pay the bills? Is it that, like, what? My vast interest in fairy tales does not seem to do it. So what is it?
Temporary too, right? I'm never an adult for so long, right? Or it's like, when does someone want to see me as an adult?
Mm-hmm.
So, a great thing happened a few months back where I was in a bar, and I was already in the bar, and one of the bouncers came up to me, and he was like an older man. I'm going to say, you know, if I had to guess, I'd say he's like 40s or whatever. And he came up to me, and he started talking to us, and he was like, well, how old are you? And my friend, loved her to death, she goes, she's 17, and she's not interested.
Oh, that's cute. That's adorable.
I was like, thank you. And he immediately like backed off because he was like, that's illegal, and then walked away. So that was when I was like, I'm very glad to look younger. Thank you for that. You just took 10 years off my life, but it's fine.
Oh my
right?
God.
And that was a moment where I could see him like working it out in his head. Well, like, oh, she could be this old. Like, she could be, you know, legally consenting. And he didn't question how like a 17-year-old was at a bar, but I guess that's not really that weird, you know.
I've lived a very boring life. I was not that interesting at 17.
It can't be that weird, yeah. It's America. But it was just one of those funny moments where I was like, you would, you know, like to see me as older than I look right now. Or like what, if someone wants to put responsibility on you at work, or you're not a child. You are a laborer. You are paid. You are an adult.
My oldest just became a legal adult and is working full time, but there's a very clear division, especially here in the United States, between people who are hired for their abilities and then the people who are hired for their physical presence. And if you're sick and you're hired for your physical presence, they don't care. You have to be at work, even if you have surgery, even if you need to have surgery, you cannot take a day off. Like, it's, no, we just got away from that topic, but it's very interesting to see how different it is.
Yeah, that is a great point. It's like you're totally just kind of reduced to being that body.
Yeah, that's we can absolutely go with what it's like when your body is not functioning, and
and no one can see that, or it just doesn't even register.
No, and going to the infantilizing and the childlikeness, it's one of the biggest reality slams in my face was I worked from the time I was 13. I've always been independent, and to go to a very different role as I got sick and had to go on disability. And then this one thing that was always like defining to me, if that's adult, that's responsibility. I didn't have it anymore. I don't have a job. I don't bring income home to my family. And it's got to be one of the biggest like head trips for me is that one big aspect of adulting I don't have anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I'm trying to think now of not only when people label me as an adult, but when I feel like the most like an adult. And, you know, really, like, one of the biggest shifts for me has been I always relied on someone to bring me to doctor's appointments. And in the last couple of years, I don't want to go with anyone. So if I can, I will just go alone. I'll take an Uber, I'll take a bus, I don't care. Because I just, you know, having someone waiting for me outside, having someone, you know, ask me about my test results, you know, my mother would always try to come in the room with me and I would be like, no. Can I just do this one part, please? You know, the part about my entire bodily history. And
oh yeah,
right? And, like, going to the doctors is already totally infantilizing, already, you know, taking away everything you got. So for me, that's been, like, the one thing where I'm like, look it, I'm such an adult, I can take care of myself.
I'm so jealous right now. I have to have someone drive me to all of my doctor's appointments, and it's always my mom. And to like, it's really screwed up our dynamic as far as like, I am a 40-something-year-old adult, and I've raised kids, I've run businesses, like I've lived, I feel like I've gone through all the steps, and all of a sudden I'm down to being 16, having the same like run through circular conversations on, did I do this? Well, shouldn't I have done that? And wouldn't that have made it, like, it's this constant justification of, also justification of mood, like someone's doing me a favor, so I better be sing for my supper.
Exactly, right? And you're like, you're at the doctor's, you're pissed off, you probably just experienced some ableism, you don't want to be there most of the time.
I mean, if I'm there, I don't go, because my insurance is so awful. Financially, I can't do it anymore. The only thing I go for is to relocate a bone I can't relocate myself. So I'm in agony. And I was trying to Uber because I couldn't get a ride, and the Uber cost would have been $80. And I was like, I can just take extra painkillers, I'll deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, like, I think that's the other thing, though, is that,
well, I was just going to say, because Uber has, like, their wheelchair accessibility thing, but it is not their cheapest option. So you, like, which seems against ADA. Like, if you have a theater ticket in your wheelchair, they give you the cheapest price, and they give you a seat that you can see from. And, like, it seems really weird that Uber is able to skirt that and still charge more instead of subsidizing this. Like, I don't think that the driver should have to carry this burden, but Uber is a multi-billion-dollar company that should be subsidizing this.
Yeah, it needs to be controlled or regulated in some ways. I mean, the Uber surcharges in general are terrible. The other night, it was lightly snowing in Wisconsin, where it snows all the time. And usually with a $12 Uber ride from the airport to my house, whose quote was $12, was $60.
Oh my God.
And you live in Wisconsin, you can't drive in this much snow. And it was just like, but what they were capitalizing on was, it's a little bit icy, people aren't going to want to walk, let's surcharge.
Okay, but and then what about the people who are using canes or walking aids, or who are unstable on their feet, and like... This is
not even accounted for, right? The people that would regularly need even more support at that time.
I have so many issues with Uber. But I was just looking at today, The Mighty just put out an article, and I'm going to go on another tangent, but I just kind of feel like it's important. They put out an article today with a young person who uses a wheelchair. I'm guessing she was mentioning pounds, so I'm guessing somewhere in England. But there was no accessibility to her classes. And I just did an interview with someone who had to use a wheelchair, and she's a teacher, and she's like, the accessibility is impossible for me. I don't know how the students are doing it. And it's like, we keep talking, especially in this country, about for the kids, save the kids. Like, everything is like trotting these children out, and then we're refusing to create accessible spaces where people who are disabled can get an education. College campuses are some of the worst. We're going to, my littlest, I know this is awful, I called her that for so long, I don't know how to not. After you just said that, I'm going to work on a new nickname. I will work on this. The funny thing is, she's almost taller than I am now, so I've got to really work on a new one. She wants to go to Oxford, so we're visiting the campus, and I was like, okay, what do I do with my wheelchair? And everyone I've talked to is like, you are screwed.
I went to Oxford.
You did? Oh my God, we got to talk after this.
Yeah.
But I'm like, so what do disabled people who go to Oxford do? Like, how do you get to your classes? How do you, like... We've definitely done interviews on this campus, on this show, with people who are students who are like, I've had to leave college because there was no access and no understanding of my situation.
I mean, there might be, like, honestly, I mean, like, it's a, huge group of colleges. I think 38 colleges total.
We're putting together our plans. We're going there very, very soon.
Yeah. I want to say that, honestly, like, just thinking, I think there's usually, like, one more modern or newer building per each college, where I'm guessing, I don't know how they would coordinate to have, like, all of their classes in there. But there's also just the issue that many times, because it's such a green space, there's times where there's like not footpaths, or the footpaths are just covered in mud, and like sometimes you just have to walk on the grass to get to your classes, or you have to go all the way around the entire building.
And good luck without a power wheelchair. Good luck with a power wheelchair, but without, oh my God.
And everything has like a fob access. And it's just like very inconvenient. Like there's just, I know it's just like a safety thing to get onto each campus, but it's also very inconvenient for like an able person. Like I don't have mobility issues, and I had trouble just getting around. It just took forever. And I did not. I don't remember seeing like any accessible bathrooms, so I would contact before and find out about that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have some planning. I mean, I'm very lucky that I'm what's called an ambulatory wheelchair user, which means that the majority of my wheelchair use is to keep me safe, because my heart rate changes, I faint, I dislocate any bone at any time. So a lot of it is, so what we're planning on is just tons of painkillers, and I use my canes, so I use those a lot too. But we're going to use the wheelchair in London just to keep me safe and able to get around. But it just, I was just reading through the article, like, yeah, our high schools are not accessible. My child's middle school certainly is not accessible. The grade school I couldn't barely get on the campus for the graduation.
Yeah. Have I don't know if you had seen this story. I've been talking about it publicly. Right. Well, first, we're talking about this. We always talk about for the kids, kids of the future. Mm-hmm. And in childhood studies, there's been a long kind of interrogation of that question of kids of the future, but it's a certain kid, right? It's a white, affluent, able-bodied, heterosexual kid. Like that's the image of the future that we're working towards here. That's who we're doing it for, and the rest are left in the dust.
Even that is like questionable. I think that there's this mythology of, and even down to how we create our laws, like just watching the laws go through and where I live is very much under the assumption that children have adults who have their best interest at heart. And that's even for affluent children is not always true. I mean, you remember, like, you're of an age where you probably went through financial aid recently, and I remember being shocked that my parents, even though I was an adult, my parents' income decided my financial aid. I was like, well, what if my parents disowned me? Like, they didn't, but what if they did? It was.
And you do.
Yeah, it was very strange to realize just how we create this mythology of every child has someone who's, in charge of them, who has their best absolute interest at heart. And so we create laws that are based on that idea and policies on that idea. It's very wrong.
Very much like, it reminds me of two things. It reminds me, one, of the pro-choice slogan that's like, you want to save kids until they're born. And you don't want to deal with them anymore. Like, that's the government we're setting up. And it also reminds me of, what was it you had just said?
I think my name's Monica. That's as far as my brain goes today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There was something, too, about disability there. That'll come back to me.
I mean, one thing I do want to just say is I used to work in very affluent areas. I was a nanny in affluent areas that's how I put myself through school. And some of the gravest amount of child abuse I saw was in those communities. Not to say all, not to say if you're rich, you're a bad parent. All I'm saying is like in those communities of incredible levels of wealth, the amount of like what would be called child abandonment anywhere else was common and extreme. And it's just interesting how we all do that. But as far as us being disabled and patted on the head, I'm really stuck between that I need more of it and I hate it. Because, like I'm just trying to explain to when I'm trying to work with someone who needs to help me, it's like, okay, I understand you're doing everything you can here and I'm not getting it. Like my brain goes into a rabid hamster trying to eat its own tail and I don't know what anyone's saying anymore. And trying to explain to someone like, okay, you're going to have to break this down like I'm an idiot. Like you have to take this all the way down for me. Like
Yeah.
Like, don't assume anything about my intelligence level right now because I don't have one. It's 3 o'clock p.m. and I haven't had my painkillers yet. I don't have anything for you.
Yeah.
Please talk down to me. And then I hate it when people talk down to me. It is such an awful...
Right. I'm the same way. Like, I just sometimes am very sensitive to sounds. I'm like, I need sunglasses. I need headphones. I need you to get away from me for all day. And then people will come over. Oh, are you okay? Do you need to go outside? Yeah, just please. Like, I will tell you. I can communicate those needs. Don't communicate them for me. So it is that hard balance. And what made me think of this, I think this is an understated connection between both kids and disabled people, is that there is both the assumption that I think we take kids for granted a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gets into the abuse issue, especially, the more I, associate with my niece and nephew, the more I realize how smart they are, how much we need to believe them more. Mm-hmm. Right? They're always kind of just considered lesser. And I think it is built on that myth, the same with disabled people. Oh, someone's taking care of them.
Yeah.
That's like when people are like, why do we need the ADA? You could just be nice to disabled people, which is a serious argument that happens.
Oh, can we just discuss really quickly my favorite, the libertarian argument? If they're not treating you nicely, just don't use them, and that will just, let the market correct itself. It's like, that doesn't work. I will never be able to get groceries. I will never be able to get to a doctor or a hospital. Like, there are some things that we just have to decide.
I wait 6 months for one doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to die if I have to wait another 6 months. Like, that is the reality, right, for many people.
I just saying, like, my physical therapist, who's one of my favorite humans on the face of the earth, that office, which unfortunately she had to rent, does not have wheelchair accessible bathrooms. So you have to plan. And I'm like, well, I only go once a week. What about people who work here? Like,
yeah.
That's, it's a whole office suite. It's like this giant city of offices, and not one of them has an accessible bathroom.
Right. And what's amazing to me is that, like, we communicate these needs, right? Mm-hmm. Like, always saying, like, these things need to change. And not just for me, but for other people, right? It's not just my access needs. Other people have these, and other people will have these.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we're not believed, or it's just, like, discredited. And it just reminds me very much of how easily, like, kids are discredited for the stories they tell and the things they say they need. Like, it's always like, if a kid's crying and you can't immediately figure out what it is, they must be faking.
Oh, God.
And, like, right, and sometimes they are. Like, sometimes my niece is, like, faking crying. But I'm like, she's faking crying because she's still upset about something.
Yeah. There's a reason for it.
On.
Yeah, figure out the reason.
Like, yeah, right? And, like, people don't want to self-evaluate, or they don't want to change their ways. Often they don't want to change their ways.
Or there's nothing that can be done. I mean, we're dealing with a kid here who, there's definitely something going on at home, but it was like, if we call facilities, that kid gets removed and put into a foster system that might be way worse. So it's like, it's the same thing with, like, there's a lot going on here where it's like, there's problems, but we as a society have not decided to solve them. And a lot of the problems we have are so much bigger than what a person can do.
Right.
Our government was supposed to step in and protect. Like, there are definitely things that the government was supposed to be in charge of and to handle because it's too much for one person. There's no legal way to handle these things.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like that. It's like we've built up that narrative of a safety net for everyone that doesn't exist.
No.
And it's still, and if, you don't have the safety net, then the onus of the responsibility is still on the parent or still on the disabled person to work harder to overcome it. And I think one of the reasons, I'm kind of critical about this, that we love these, love these news stories of it, like, kid with a disadvantaged background gets into Harvard. Like, they love that story.
Inspiration porn. It's inspiration porn, and everyone, goes nuts over it without wanting to look at why it's inspirational. It's inspirational because it almost never happens, and there's a system that ensures it almost never happens, and no one wants to look at that system. Like, the kid who got the walker built at Home Depot, that's a dystopian nightmare story. That is, like, yay that there's people who are better than the government, but that's highlighting a dystopian issue. Like, that's...
Right. There was one recently that it was like, someone was like, it was like, It's like teenager makes a wheelchair ramp for his grandmother out of Legos, and you're like, that's amazing. Why the fuck wasn't there a ramp?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why is this kid in school? Why did he have to do that? Like, there's so many questions.
There are a lot, yes. And, like, there should never be a moment where we don't go, that kid's amazing, or that person is awesome. Cheers for, like, really hitting the height there of being a good person. Mm-hmm. But we also have to look over towards the system that made that thing that was their problem and go, okay, so good job. Now you've illustrated what needs to happen. Let's make sure this happens for everyone who isn't lucky enough to have you in their life. Like,
right. And I think that's where the moment too is, where it's like, we like to see those kids have adult qualities.
Yeah.
It's like, they like kids, but they expect us to be able to turn into adults, to take responsibility when we need to take initiative when we need to. Thinking of other things, like, even to, like, apply to things. I have a lot of students come up to me, and they're, in undergrad students, so they're, like, 20, and some of them are thinking about grad school, and they're like, how do you apply for grad school? And I'm like, did you go to, like, the advising office? And they're like, yeah, they didn't help me, because they're so swamped, right? It's, like, such an underfunded office. They can't help, 40,000 kids or whatever. So they come to me, and then I help them, and they're like, how do people apply to grad school? And I'm like, most people have zero help, and they totally do it themselves. And it's because, like, by the time you're 22, 21, you should have been able to figure this out.
Well, I'll throw in applying for disability. If there's ever a more psychotic process that you have to be on your game and healthy and together and adult, it's applying for disability. Like, that is one of the most insane experiences I've ever gone through.
And it's amazing because you've probably seen this. This is, like, popular on Twitter, but I've heard it in, like, in conversation too, where a disabled person is complaining about something. Oh, I can't, afford this, I can't do that. And they're like, why don't you just go on disability?
Yeah, because that's just easy. No problem.
It can take people between 1 month, 3 years to get approved. And they might wait 3 years and not get approved.
There's also that you can't earn money during that time. Yeah. So if you are not privileged, if you don't have a support network, I know someone who's homeless because of this. Like, yeah. And then a lot of people have to hire lawyers, which don't know how anyone affords that. I didn't have to. I was tremendously lucky that one of my disorders was on the list, which basically just was like, okay.
Right.
Done here. So I was fundamentally lucky and privileged, and I still couldn't have any money coming in, I think, for 9 months. So that really screwed up our finances. But I was one of the privileged, fortunate people. Like, but it is an insane process where you're like, I'm proving to you I physically and emotionally and mentally cannot work. I cannot do it. But you're asking me to do almost 30 to 40 hours of work a week to get my case together. So I have to be on this huge game to prove to you that I'm adult enough to get this together. Otherwise, I'm obviously faking and not doing the right thing. But I'm also proving to you I'm not capable of working. It's one of the craziest experiences. There's whoever designed this obviously does not understand disability or people.
No, it's not performance. And I mean, it's like this with so many government application processes where I'm like, you'd have to take a class to learn how to do this right.
Yeah, the bureaucracy is real. I just pulling together our taxes is insane. Citizenship is, oh my God. Any of you who are going through citizenship, I bow down to you. You brave, amazing people going through one of the worst systems I've ever heard of. Compassion. Yeah. The fact that almost none of us could pass that test who were born here should say a lot. Like,
no. And not to mention, they don't have translators at every single office, right? These offices are underfunded. I've had students that have had to become, extremely proficient and fluent in English extremely fast just so they could translate for their parents so they could become citizens. I mean, so these kids are taking a second job just to do that.
Right? And then, let's move this over to disability towards people who are deaf, who are blind, who have to have, so much of their world filtered through another person to get the input that they need. I am not deaf, I am not blind. So please, if you have more to add to that conversation, just send me an email, because I really want more voices on this. But it's just, I don't like anything filtered for me. I want to experience as much as I can firsthand. So I can only imagine that would be frustrating, at least for what I would feel.
Yeah, or I'm even thinking, like, imagine you, did you have an interview for disability?
Yes. Well, they tried to fob me off to a phone interview.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which they're like, no, it's the same exact, it's video, it's totally fine. And then someone told me, do not do that. Do not make them see you. So I refused and made them do the appointment anyway. And then I found out, like, and I was barely sitting up. Like, I was in so much pain. I was crying. And the lady was like, didn't even have the right folder in front of her. I figured that out like about 20 minutes in, and she had no idea what I was dealing with. She was just like writing out things, and at the end, and she's like, okay, I'm all done. I'm like, how about we just go over really quick what my day is? Can you give me 10 minutes and we'll just go through from morning to night, and I'm just going to explain what all of these things are that happened, and you just write that down. Okay, can we do that? And she's like, yeah, I guess so. About when I got to noon, she had her mouth open. Her eyes were like dinner plates. She's like, okay, I had no idea. I'm like, well, it's all in my file. Like, we had doctor's notes. We had surgery notes. We had, like, it looked like War and Peace. Yeah. And she hadn't read through any of it. They were just going to, like, throw it through the system. And I'm really glad I didn't walk in, I used my wheelchair, but I was, like, I'm glad I was present and accounted for. But if that wasn't one of the most, like, and my mom was there, so I felt like I was, like, 5 trying to explain and having someone else go, oh, but wasn't this true? Wasn't this true? I'm like,
it's impossible. Right? Yeah. You're just making you have to make an argument for, like, why you need all this help, like, why you're vulnerable, why you're dependent in these ways, which, like, there's nothing wrong with, of course, needing help and, like, being vulnerable, but it's still a socially shamed condition, and, like, you can't de-internalize that.
No, and the assumption is that I am happier not working. Like, I would almost sell my soul to work. Like, are you kidding? The idea that this makes me happier or that I have a more fulfilled or easy life, that's a hard one. Is there's just this baseline assumption that I'm guessing that some people who are in privilege enjoy not being useful, because I can't think of another way, that there's just this assumption that there's these groups of people who are like, I'd rather just not contribute. I'd rather just sit and do nothing. It's like, I don't know anyone in my life who feels like that beyond 2 days. Like 2 or 3 days, sure, I can watch daytime TV. That's fine. But after 2 or 3 days, I need purpose. And that's one of our hierarchy of needs, is purpose. So it's so weird to me that there's this idea that, like, that just skips out on disabled people, that we don't need purpose. It's
the purpose, and it's also, too, that, like, it feeds into, I think, adjacent figures, like the myth of the welfare queen. It's also, like, how, like, racialized welfare is. Like, I think there's a lot of adjacent figures that we can think about in regard to disability, of how these stereotypes and images get, kind of mapped onto things.
I just think that anyone who takes a certain level tax break needs to give a drug sample. If they're going to require these drug samples for people on welfare, I want the places and people who are taking massive tax breaks to give drug samples to prove that they deserve these tax breaks. That's corporate welfare. I mean, we are paying for Walgreens for Walmart to exist. Like, I want these companies to be shamed because they can't afford to. If I have to go through shaming, they should.
Right, and that was, I think, a similar thing recently that it's been coming up around the Democratic candidate discourse, where someone was like, well, if Bernie Sanders has to show his health record, they all need to show their tax records.
I don't see a problem with that. If you're going to run a country, you should prove that you have no ties to anything.
You didn't do tax fraud? Right, but that was like, someone was like, and it's kind of an interesting equation as to, like, what is more personal. Your tax record, I would say, not more personal. That should be public knowledge, honestly. Versus your personal health record, which everyone was like, "Well, why does he need to show that?" Like, And they really put him through the ringer for it.
I have not chosen a candidate yet. I guess I should really.
Oh, I'm not even make choosing. Choices. I'm not even saying I'm guilt to anybody, but, like, just to put anyone through the onus of just saying, "Here's my medical record."
Yeah,
it's just.
I don't know. I mean, I also am of the mind of, like, okay, so you're going to be running the country. I need to know you're not going to die. Like,
oh, I think that's fair. It was just the interrogation of the record that got weird, because I'm like, you're not making all of them do it.
That is strange. Like, it seems like there should be some, like, if you go in for a managerial position, like, you apply, you have to have, like, job references. You have to have, like, actually worked at the job. You have to pass a test. You have to do a physical. Like, there's all sorts of things. Right. Like, just to, like, become a manager at Starbucks, like, or, like, work at, like, Costco, and those are awesome jobs. Seriously, I'm just saying that there should be a standardized, like, what we do for people who want to become, like, the leader of the United States. That seems...
It is, and it's also very profiling. It's like, oh, well, Bernie Sanders, you know, he yells a lot. He probably has high blood pressure. It's just making assumptions about how he looks and how he acts.
And we can talk about Hillary Clinton in 2016 with her slight stumble and swoon, and everyone, like, she's gonna die. She obviously can't physically handle this. And then Bernie Sanders has a heart attack, and everyone's like, it's fine. All good. I mean,
it's like yeah, that levels of performance, you know, which is, you know, cut with gender across it, of course. But it's like, you know, you have to appear this certain level of health, this certain image of health, and I'm like, you obviously don't know how disability can appear, or how chronic illness can appear, or any of this.
And how much time do you spend trying to look okay or sound okay so that people take you seriously? Like, I spend a tremendous amount of time with, like, the healthiest gazelle in a room full of lions. Like, I'm all good. Don't worry. It's all great. I'm fine. Like, because otherwise you get discounted. Like, your opinion gets, and I'm sure anyone who presents as female knows this for a fucking fact, is you better be the healthiest, strongest gazelle with no, like, tremble in your voice, because the lions descend and what you said has no bearing. If you have emotion, or if you're disabled, or, like, you know, put anything else underneath that. But, I mean, I spend a tremendous amount of energy trying to appear okay.
It is. It's appear okay, and then also, especially in professional context, for me, it's not only to appear okay, but to appear as an adult. To bring it back to that, right? Like, I'm in a position where I teach college students, and I look younger than most of them, or I look like I could be one. And I really haven't had massive issues of disrespect, but I'm always ready and kind of prepared. It's always in the back of my mind. So, you know, I go in and I, you know, dress, I think, more professional than I need to teach college classes, because I want to set myself apart. I want to look older. I, you know, spend a lot of time trying to think about, okay, how am I going to say? Am I going to put, you know, this voice on? And, you know, I usually make a couple unconscious or conscious, you know, slips to, like, how old I am, just to reassert them, like, oh, I wasn't alive when that, you know, you weren't alive when this happened, or I remember this, but you don't, sort of things. And I'm always doing this performance, and I'm so conscious of it. And for me, I'm just, like, saying, like, well, I need to have this authority in case, because I know it could happen. And there are times when I'm discredited and discounted. You know, students don't listen to me or don't take me seriously, or a lot treat me as their friend, which is weird, because you wouldn't do that. Like, you know, my male colleagues don't get that.
I mean, I get the other side, because I'm now a middle-aged woman, and I get the invisibility, where it's like, your opinion doesn't matter. You're just a Karen, or, like, you know,
or you're just a mom.
Yeah, you're just a mom. What do you know? You're just at home. Or, you know, my favorite is, you're too fat, you're too old, you're too ugly, your opinion doesn't count. Twitter's a beautiful place, may I just say.
It's amazing.
Highly entertaining. Like, wait, what did my age or my appearance have to do with my point? Like, what? Yeah. I mean, well, I really don't care what you think about how I look or what my age is. Like, none of that is, like, that's accident of birth stuff there. Like, but why is my opinion not important anymore?
I remember one time I was in a Twitter fight with someone about the way they were discussing sexual assault survivors, and I just destroyed their argument, and you could tell they were panicking. And they just replied to me, and they looked at my profile picture on Twitter, and they just said, "You look pretty sick, you better take some vitamins." And I just said, "I don't understand why you think that's an insult, and I'm actually chronically ill." And everyone on Twitter was like, "Yeah, that's not an insult."
A nice try, though. I mean, like,
right?
Not sure what you're going for, but panic response.
You didn't insult me. You just stated a fact. I probably could take some more vitamins. I'm pretty sick.
You want to pay for them? I mean, those vitamins are expensive and not covered, so.
And I was getting also, like, I'm like, a vitamin is not going to fix these chronic illnesses, trust me.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for just a second, because we're, you know, infantilizing, and but I cannot tell you how many people have felt like they need a voice in my healthcare. Like, you shouldn't drink wine. You shouldn't eat sugar. Why aren't you taking this CBD mixture, which oddly costs $500 a month? I'm not kidding. But like, yeah, right. Like, I mean, I haven't been this physically public to people's opinions since I was pregnant or I was a child. But all of a sudden, everyone has like an opinion on how I should be living, eating, exercising, because yoga is a great idea if you dislocate, by the way. Fantastic plan. Especially hot yoga.
Yeah.
I will absolutely sweat out all those toxins and be better by the end of the class. No problem. Not to say if you're EDS that yoga works for you. If that does, cheers. Salute.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. I need an ambulance. Seriously, I did when I took a yoga class. It was not, I mean, sculpture. It was no longer fitness. But yeah, that's definitely a thing where it's
always, why are you doing this? Like, everyone becomes like your mom or something like that, or it's kind of assumed, like, I think it speaks to like disabled people as the kind of the charity of the society, right? So people think they're doing like a good thing too when they tell you that, like, oh, I really care about you. So like, there's one time my friend texted me at like 3 a.m. and I replied because I was awake, and they go, why aren't you sleeping? And I was like, you just texted me at the same time. Like, what are you talking about? Also, none of your business, right? None of your business. And I was like, what? And she's like, you have work in the morning. And I was like, so do you. Like,
thanks, Mom.
I need sleep all the time. Like, this, I do, but like
I mean, I think we're getting to, like, the whole point of all of this, which is the dichotomy of needing to be treated in a special way and also being insulted by being treated differently. And that is that our autonomy is what's important. What we say we need or want needs to be the end of that.
Right.
It can't be someone else's, someone else can, like, lovingly try, I don't know, what else. If you want to, like, lovingly try to tell me what to do, I wish you the best. But if I tell you it doesn't work for me, that needs to be the end of that discussion. Like,
it's hard too, because I think it matters on what figure. Like, if I say that to my friends, I think they're better understanding of that. They'll know to back off. But if I say it to my parents, it immediately turns into, I'm a mom, I can do whatever I want. I never stop being a parent. And I'm just like, yeah, but no. If you really don't know my body. I was trying to tell my parents eventually when I started therapy for the first time. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to therapy. And they were like, oh, you don't need that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just told you something. I didn't have to tell you that. I'm going to do it. I think it would help. That's the end of the story there.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the end of it.
I mean, I think, like, parenting has changed this last generation or so of, like, understanding a child's autonomy. At least that's, like, starting to be a discussion, which I did not grow up with that.
No. I'm not experiencing that.
Yeah, I'm way older than you are, and I certainly did not have that in the 70s or 80s or 90s when I was growing up with my parents, where, like, I had autonomy, and that was, like, one of my biggest things that I promised myself I would keep in my head with my kids was their autonomy. They're not an extension of me. If they're telling me that something hurts, I take that as fact. If they tell me that they are depressed, that is fact, and we will handle it from there. But, like, yeah, I'm not smarter than they are about what's going on in their heads or their bodies. Like, that's...
I wonder if this is also this growing, the growing recognition of child autonomy also kind of speaks to what we said earlier. It's like kids are becoming, like, adults faster. Or at least, taking on the appearance of adults, like through social media and stuff like that. Like, I'm amazed at the things my niece, says to me about, like, she was 9 and she, like, wanted a bra and stuff like this. Or she has, like, social media accounts I don't even have, which is weird to me. And, right, she's texting her friends when she was, like, 8. And I was just like, what? I didn't even have a phone until I was 16. Right, so as these kids kind of take on these more adult roles earlier, it might also kind of force parents to reckon with this. Because there's also the argument, which I'm sure you're familiar with, like, if you, push your kid too hard, they'll rebel against you. They won't trust you. You try to too much, like finding that balance.
I am not a parenting expert. I've just, the only expertise I've had is I've done it for 19 years, so that's kind of... That's all I've got. Yeah. Sorry, my brain just went on to stop as I was just, like, running through, like, all of the stuff with kids. But I remember being a kid and, like, no one knew what I had. It took till I was 36 to get diagnosed, which is insane because everyone's like, you're too young to be sick. You're too young to feel like this. There's no way you could be in this much pain. You wouldn't be functioning. And then you find out later that, pain is actually a scalable thing. You get used to things. So yes, I was dislocating all the time back then. I was in agony. It's just, what else do you do? Like, I just didn't know how to express.
And if you are, especially when you're younger, I mean, I remember, having symptoms of depression when I was very younger, and I don't recognize them until now. Because I have no idea what's going on. I just thought, maybe this is normal. Maybe my body's changing. All of these things. And I, didn't communicate them because there wasn't a kind of culture where it said, like, you should communicate your needs.
Yeah. Or that you even could.
Right? Even when I went to doctors, it was like, oh, I'm growing, you're a kid, it's fine. And I'm like, could you just check this out, though? Like, I don't think I should be feeling this way.
I mean, I also had PTSD from sexual assault, and so, like, having doctors, like, tell me to just sit down and be quiet, or even, like, in school, like, just going in for tutoring with a male tutor who's lovely. Like, he was one of the nicest teachers who was giving up his time, and I couldn't handle it. I would have panic attacks in his classroom, and I was like... It was just very different on what I just was desperate for someone else to live in my brain for a day so that someone else could express what this was actually like, because I couldn't imagine anyone else was going through these things, which my smallest talks about all the time is like, why don't people talk about how abnormal their insides are? Like, why don't they talk about how abnormal their thoughts are? Because I feel so isolated. I feel so lonely and scared. I'm like, it's literally why I'm doing this podcast. Like, it's exactly why.
It's so many things.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
Like why? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the smallest wants to become a therapist because 12 was like.
You're be an amazing therapist.
That kid is. We had a friend who was going through a divorce who was staying with us, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I come back out, and everything I was planning on saying, I come out and like I think she was like 9 at the time, and was like basically doing an entire therapy session with this person. It was unreal. Yeah.
The future.
Come on, this generation is like some of the most aware, alert, and compassionate. I know there's still bullies. I know there's still like huge problems.
There always can be, yeah.
But I have to say, like, we weren't like my class, and we were in the Bay Area enclave of like liberalism, and we didn't have this stuff going. Like, there is like, I don't know. I'm really hopeful about this generation. There's a lot I love about it.
I mean, like I said, I teach, the youngest I've ever taught, I think, is like a 17-year-old or something like that. Like, college freshmen come in, they're 17, 18, 19, or whatever like that. Oh my
God, that hurts. Jeez. That's so young.
I'm, like, blown away every time. My expectations are always, like, I'm going to have to do all this unpacking. I'm going to have to, make them realize, like, yes, ableism is a problem, all this stuff. And they come in, and it's like 2 weeks into the semester, and I remember we had this huge conversation about, like, the opioid crisis, and I didn't even go there, and they brought it to race, they brought it to class, they brought it to stigma, and I was like, yes, this is everywhere I wanted to go, and you're absolutely slaying it.
Man, I grew up, like, I wasn't wealthy, but we were privileged, and I grew up in this super liberal area where I literally did not understand what everyone was talking about until I got to junior high. And then in college, I did a summer bridge program where I got to teach incoming 17, 18-year-olds who educated me in ways I will be forever grateful for, because all of my privilege got checked at the door very quickly. And all of the things I was like, oh, but, this, it can be bad, but you can just rise above. And then talking to them, I'm like, no, you can't. Something has to change. Like, it was such an incredible eye-opening experience. I'm deeply grateful to those students for being patiently talking me through and just learning from them. But I wish that more people would do that for disabled people, like listen to what our actual experiences are without diminishing them. Like, oh, but you could just go to school online. That's an option, right? You don't have to go to a campus. Why don't you just, like those words, just, without being a part of the community, whatever community you're talking about, if you are not a part of that community, the word just needs to be removed. Like, you can't.
Right. And I love that you brought us there, because we were talking about our education experiences, And I was thinking about, like, you know, how different the world would be, oh my gosh, if everyone had considered they have just as much to learn from younger people or from disabled people as we do to teach them. And I think it speaks to this kind of linear idea of how knowledge develops, which is just experience over time, right? So it's like, I'm older, I must know more. So I was getting fights with people, right? Like, I have a background in research expertise in military technology. That is one of my research areas. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. Years of research. People still like to get in arguments with me just because they're older. It's like they have, like, no research experience in this. They weren't in the army. Like, they weren't in the military. None of that. And I'm like, you're literally just basing this off you've been on the planet longer.
And Twitter is such a dumpster fire. I mean, Twitter is such a...
Same thing with disability, where you're like, why would you be an expert on the condition I live with?
Mm-hmm. No, like, arguing with people on opioids is probably one of my least favorite experiences. It's one of the most frustrating experiences, and that's why I do videos every once in a while. This is my day without opioids, and I lasted 5 hours. That was it. Couldn't do it. So I did another video on this is my day with opioids, because I want people to understand that there's the majority of us on opioids, we are just doing the regular stuff. Like, we are just trying to get up and feed our pets, feed our kids, like, or, you know, just do basics, sit and, like, type out an email. None of this is possible without my opioids. I can't do any of it without, like, I curl up in bed and cry. That's it. Like, that's all. I have no personality without it. So it's like, it's just really important to, like, have that discussion with the community, as exhausting as that is, because a lot of the community is like, you're on opioids, you're obviously a drug addict, you obviously are this. And then there's all of the misinformation of what drug addict is and what that could mean or what it could be. There's all this judgment around something that is such a medical issue that is being treated morally instead of medically and scientifically.
It's any sort of dependence translates to an addiction. And the second you have an addiction, it's like you're villainized.
You know, and there was just that study done where the guy, there's that whole rat study of, like, the rat will just keep, you know, until it dies. And it's like, okay, but the rat was in a horrible environment. When they did Rat Park, which was like heaven for rats, it was recreational and almost never. It's like, okay, so we've created a society that's, you know, human hell, like dystopia.
Yeah.
And we're getting mad at people. We're creating this horrible situation where people have to run from their daily lives. And there's no pressure valve release. And when they find a pressure valve release, everyone gets upset and demonizes them instead of creating a better society and handling the physical and the emotional aspect of the addiction through medicine, through science, instead of through, you know, moral standings.
I mean, I think we can make a similar argument with many things that are kind of villainized or cast off as excessive. So I'm thinking about the arguments is like, you know, why do you spend so much time online? Why are you such a social media addict? And I'm like, is it me, or is it the fact that I live in hell and I need an escape from that? Like, did you ever get that? Right? So it's often, they do this too with youth a lot too. It's like, oh, my kid just sits on the internet all day. And I'm like, yeah, that's because they can't be gay anywhere else in the world. And they finally found acceptance online.
Oh my God, yes. And, you know, going back to, like, how hard it is to be a kid, they basically go into a, you know, if they're in a regular school, they're going into a place where being hit, being bullied, all the things that someone would be arrested for or thrown into HR for major training for if you were in a job is considered expected. And then they have a different boss, i.e. teacher, every hour, and constant changing social situations and everything. If you think about how, like, stressful it is to move departments, remember what it's like when you move departments every hour. Like, this is stressful, and they don't have a pressure release valve that anyone's agreed to as acceptable. So the thing that they find to just zone out, like, you know what we all do when we get home from, like, stress, everyone gets mad at them for doing.
Right.
Now, that stuff drives me up a wall and back down again. Like, everyone gets mad at me because I do allow my kids to be on the internet quite a bit. I allow tablet use a lot. But what my kid is doing is creating a graphic novel and animations and reading webtoons, which, thank you so much, my youngest, because I am addicted to webtoons. That has become a problem. Oh, those are really good. But yeah, it's amazing how we we take those comforts away.
That immense kind of regulation, which I think we can see also in disabled life, where, you know, even if our bodies are unpredictable, a lot of them have these kind of these routines, right? I have to do these things every single day. Like, there's a hashtag right now on Twitter about like crib ritual.
No way, I've got to check that out.
Right? It's like, yeah, like what do you need to do every day to like keep in check? So whereas kids are kind of forced into this like regulation of like, you know, you go to school, you have to eat lunch at like 11 in the morning, and lunch is like chocolate milk and pizza because everyone eats that at 11 in the morning. And then, right? And then you have to go through your day, you know, you have science for 40 minutes, math for 40 minutes, you know, etc. So they're forced into that, and they never really get a chance to break out of that.
Right? Or have their medications. They can't have their medications on them. So you have to hope that you're...
Right.
Yeah. Like, just with PE, like, can they run? Maybe they can't. Maybe they need their inhaler. Well, they can't have their inhaler with them. So you have to hope that the PE teacher is nice enough to let them go to the office and get their inhaler. Otherwise, you will hear the news story at least once or twice a year of a kid dying because they were not taken seriously. Which, you know, guess how many of us with chronic illness die because we don't get taken seriously.
And I think, like, that's a part of it, right? Like, if you have chronic illness, you know what you need every day.
Yeah.
You know you need to follow, like, you know, I'm going to call it our crib ritual. You need to follow that. And I'm thinking, too, of, you know, those people say things like, oh, why don't you just come to this event? Why don't you take night classes? And I'm like, you don't understand. My body has a routine, and if I don't follow it, my body doesn't work. Right? Like, you know, like when people are like, oh, you know, could I just come over? Could I just do something? Like, no. Right? I'm just like, no, you can't do that.
You know, I
spontaneity, like, that doesn't work for me. Like,
yeah, just the I was reading this women's magazine. I still hate that they're called women's magazines. It's like, but there's, you know, 20-minute recipes. I'm in. Like, tell me how to make dinner in an Instapot in 20 minutes. I'll deal with the rest of the BS. But it was like straight out of 1962, and it was like, do you want to have a house organized enough that if a neighbor stops by, it's not a big deal? And like, the neighbor stops by and they didn't bring their own cleaning supplies to clean my house. They've got jack shit to say about my house. Like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
But when I go into the pain clinic, I can't tell if it's being treated like a child or being treated like a drug addict, but it's pretty close on both ways. And my pain clinic is pretty awesome, but I get drug tested. I've never tested positive for anything, ever. And they've tested me every 2 times for 5 years. And they still test me every 2 times. And my insurance won't cover it. And it's a $600 test. And then there's just all these questions that's like, okay, I'm not supposed to drink wine. It's like, but a glass a week will not interact that badly with, like, there's no understanding of, like, I'm an adult, I can moderate. You know, if I didn't moderate, you take a test every few weeks to see that I'm not moderating. Like, it's just this crazy thing.
And also, if you don't. And if you don't, that's your choice. It's your body.
Yeah, and with this crisis of freak out, it's no longer my body. Now, I am subject to a lot of discussion and having to prove myself over and over and over again, very expensively. And again, it's another drive that has to be made 45 minutes each way.
I do, and I'm thinking about all the stories now you hear. Like, so many people don't know you have the right to ignore a doctor's orders. So many people just don't even consider that, like, being an option, right? It's just do what the doctor says or else. Even though doctors have given me bad orders before.
Unless you're doing opioids, in which case, if you are not following doctor's orders, they can put you on a list and you'll be removed from opioids. But you're right, like, you can go AMA. There's consequences, but you can go AMA.
Right, and, like, that's the slippery line, too. Like, doctors have this power over us. It's like, you know, it's like there's no negotiation, there's no arguing, there's no listening to any kind of differences or whatnot.
No, and if you bring in your own research, you're listening to Dr. Google, and, like, my medical degree means more than your research. It's like, how many hours did you spend on my disorder? Like, in your school.
Or how many times have you lived with it?
Yeah.
I live with it. If you tell me this helps and it doesn't help, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And then,
right?
if you're living in a metropolitan area, you can at least switch doctors. If you're, let's go with endometriosis for 1 second, because I think this is probably one of the biggest underlying cases for this being treated like a child with your chronic illness. Many people don't know that doctors will often refuse. And by often, I mean, I've never heard of anyone of any of my friends or research that has not been denied at least once or twice for a hysterectomy. So people with uteruses who have endometriosis, they often get denied without a man's signature, or that they've had a certain amount of children, or that they're over 40. They're just made to suffer because of some possible child that they may or may not want in the future. They're not old enough to make their own choices on their health, or somebody who just wants to have a hysterectomy, make their own childbearing decisions. That's just not allowed for someone who has a uterus.
I did. And I read something about this recently where a woman was trying to get a hysterectomy, and I don't think she didn't have endometriosis, but she goes and she went to the clinic or whatnot, and they said, you need your husband's signature. And she said, is that the law? And they said, no, but it's their policy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's pretty much the law. I'm not going to get it if not.
Yeah, and then that was all over Twitter, and everyone's like, go to a different OB, and it's like, no. There are few gynecologists, by the way. Like, that's not an option. If, like, there's states where there's only 2 in the entire state. Yeah. Like, this is nuts.
And they are booked.
Yeah. And so there's, like, all these people are like, well, I got one with no problem. And, like, just because it's not a problem for you does not mean that others aren't suffering.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely want to bring that one forward.
Right?
That was one of those ones that I was just like, I'm sorry, so you're basically having your organs fused to your spine, to other organs, and the concern is a future being that has not even been thought of yet. That's more important than your physical health, safety, and comfort. Like, mind blown. Like, wow, how are we treated like this? And then with mental health, it's even worse. There's just, once you're diagnosed, it becomes so difficult to assert yourself as a decision maker in your own care.
Yeah.
And I've kidnapped you for over an hour, and I promised you I would not kidnap you for an hour. I'm so sorry.
I was about to interrupt. But I did want to make a point, too, about the mental health, that I think this is one of the vindictive things is, it's not only that, if you have a mental health issue or you're disabled in another way, that these people, medical professionals treat you in a way that you're a child and you can't make decisions. They actually convince that you can't make decisions.
Yeah.
And that's where it perpetuates, where, I remember when I got diagnosed with depression the first time, we sat there for a very long time. And he just kind of said, like, all the things that are wrong with me by never asking, actually, what's going on. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, I'm pretty messed up. Better just, take these pills. Better just do this, Like, I was just like, you just totally, manipulated me into just doing everything you said.
It's so easy to do. I mean, like, I freeze with white coats. But my therapist, after I'd been sexually assaulted when I was a teenager, was like, okay, you're depressed. We're just going to give you these pills. And I was like, but isn't that kind of a normal reaction to sexual assault? Like, shouldn't I be depressed and anxious and scared and stressed? And, like, shouldn't we be exploring how to handle that rather, like, just for me personally and what my own care needed to be at that time, like, I decided not to. But it was just so interesting that there was like this, you need to make everyone else around your life comfortable when you're trying to deal with your mental and physical health. Everyone else needs to feel better. And part of that is feeling like we've all got this by you medicating. And for me, that was not the answer. But it was really interesting that it was like, you're a teenager. You obviously have no idea what you want or need. And
that's the narrative about teenagers. You're confused. You don't know, right? It speaks to also, I do need to go because I have to call
so sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry.
It speaks to the argument right now also around child sexuality or teenage sexuality and gender identity.
Yes.
Oh, it's just a phase. And you're like, just shut up.
A kid who's very close to us is right now just asking some very big questions. And I can't tell you how many people in my life who are adults are like, it's really dangerous to label at that age. I'm like, if that same child told you that she was this gender that she was born as and had a crush on a boy, you'd be like, oh, okay. How's that not labeling? Like,
Or kids are like 6 and they're like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Are you going to be like, that's labeling?
Yeah, no, sorry, you can't. No, you're a boy and you're climbing trees. That's labeling. Like it's so it's so crazy that we're so as adults invested in like what they're going to be. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm keeping kidnapping you. I will let you go. I will release. I'm so sorry.
No, you're great. Yeah, I'll talk to you. I can talk to you all day.
All right. Well, I will let you go. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me know if you ever want to talk again.
Anytime. My God. Please. Are you kidding? Does the desperation and loneliness show?
No, you're great. You're great. It's not a pity. It's like a desire.
Excellent. Well, come back to me with another topic and I'm in. That sounds great. Right. Or just like call me and talk about robots. I'm in for that too.
I know. This is a conversation we need to have.
Please. All right. Well, everyone have a great week. Be kind, be gentle, be a badass. Head over to our Patreon if you can and are able. If you want to, but you can't afford to, just spend a few minutes sharing our episodes. Really appreciate it. We just hit like over 170,000 downloads. So thank you. I know, right? Oh my God. And welcome to everyone new who's listening. So please keep sharing. That's incredibly kind and generous of you all. So have a great week. And that be a badass thing is super important this week. Everyone be a badass and wash your hands and get vaccines if you can. Like, this is important right now.
Please wash your hands. No joke.
And if you are not immune deficient, you can vaccine.